Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
We are so delighted to be with you this evening and to be back in India. It so feels like we're coming home. And we had, the other evening, we had a little tea here at our ashram in Gargaon, and there were maybe 60 or 70 people, but each one of them was a friend. And we know that many of you who are watching, we have shared wonderful, inspiring times together in all the different times we've been in India. And it feels so heart-opening. We shared the other evening, I don't know if you saw the video of it, but we said, Swamiji opened the door for all of us Westerners to come to India, but then you were standing there welcoming us. And without you, we would not have been able to really have the same experience and the same ability to share Master's teachings. So we just thank you so much for your friendship, your support, but more, I'm not saying this just personally, really what we thank you for is the kindred spirit of discipleship to our great Master Yoganandaji, to our lifelong teacher Swami Kriyanandaji, and in this, it's the deepest kind of friendship. It's not based on personality, but it's based on the soul's aspirations and the soul's dedication. So it's a joy for us to be here, and now Jyotish will share a bit, and then I will speak after he does. I'm going to take a moment and pass the baton, or in this case the microphone, to him.
So, there, I think that does it. So, as Devi said, it's so nice to be back in India. In many ways, Devi and I feel that we're Indian souls in Western bodies. And naturally, that's also what Master said is happening at this time. In Dwapara Yuga, America especially and India are joining together in order to lead the world into a kind of a new balance that hasn't been there before. He said that, and I don't want to mean just America as a country and India as a country. It's really the temperament, the vibration, the kind of cultural leaning that each of those nations represent. But he said American efficiency needs to come to India, and Indian spirituality needs to come to India, to America. And the joining of those two, practical efficiency and deep spirituality, is what we all need at this time in order to achieve the balance in our life that we're all seeking. And so he said in order to help accomplish this, that many Americans are being born in India, and you can see this especially here in Gurgaon, where you drive down the road and many of the cars are American brand cars, and you see the luxury malls and the advertising and all of those things that when I first started coming to India, the first trip I made to India was 1974. And so that's over 40 years now. And it is truly a different climate, a different culture, a whole different way of looking at life that you see at least in the modern cities in India. I'm not talking so much because we don't spend very much time in the older villages out in the countryside where change is not nearly as rapid. But in the cities, change is extremely rapid. In some cases it's beneficial, and in other cases not so beneficial. Friends of ours from Delhi were telling us that traffic has gotten so bad in New Delhi that people won't even try to go 3 or 4 blocks in order to do shopping. because there's just gridlock on the roads and you can't move. It could take you a long time. Now that is worse than it was even 6 months ago when we left in March. And so things are changing very, very rapidly, and I don't want to dwell on the minutiae of it. I just want to talk about this balance of the East and West and how very, very important it is. So India needs to come up to a more efficient and practical way of working on the physical plane. But honestly, the physical plane is so much less important than India's great gift to the world, which is the deep spirituality that it has. Even among those, we happened to be on an airplane on Monday and then again today, and when we were sitting in the airplane, the man who happened to be sitting next to me in our row was curious because we were dressed as we are now in our Nayaswami blue outfit, and he asked, "What is that? May I ask, good sir, why are you wearing that?" And so we began chatting, and he is a modern businessman, has a lot of responsibility, works for a big company, a Western company. He's the Indian representative of a very large American company. And he was talking about, we just began talking about things. He didn't have a strong religious bent. In other words, he said, that we began talking about meditation, the effects of meditation, why to do meditation. And he was basically saying, yes, but that seems to be the religion that my parents did or my grandparents did. And how does it apply to practical affairs in the world? He said, I'm a businessman. He said, I know I'm well read. I know that I've read the importance of meditation. I've even flirted with it, is the word that he used. But he said, I haven't found a way to keep continuing that practice of meditation. So we just chatted for a while about how meditation is very practical in our daily affairs, our daily life. To be calm, to be centered, to be uplifted and joyful. If you're that, everything that you do goes more smoothly, more efficiently, one might say. And at any rate, we're all devotees together, and you know the advantage of meditation. But this balancing that's happening right now is very interesting and very beneficial to both cultures, but it's not also without its turbulence and difficulties. Devi and I have been traveling a lot. We were in America for several months, and even when we were there, we traveled quite a bit. And then about a month ago, a little over a month ago, we went to Italy, and we're there at our center in Italy for a month. We gave lots of programs, lots of classes, lots of meetings with people. We were very busy, but you can be busy outwardly and not so busy inwardly. And as long as we felt centered in ourselves, which because of the long practice of meditation and Kriya Yoga, generally speaking, we feel very centered in ourselves. And that allows us to do a lot of outward activity without feeling that we're terribly overburdened or terribly even busy. And so you've got to spend 24 hours in a day. Most everybody that I know is very busy in one way or another. We happen to be commuting more on airplanes, but many of you watching have to commute by car, and train or other means, and you're moving your body back and forth a lot every day. And so either that can leave you frazzled, or you can do those things which keep you centered during that time. You know, during the commute time, if you listen to a talk by Swamiji, or listen to music that is uplifting and centering, you can actually arrive at your destination not nearly as frazzled as you would otherwise. And so I don't want to spend tonight talking. We're just here really to visit. We don't want to go deeply into any one subject and give a discourse there. But we had a wonderful, wonderful time with our friends in Italy, and had just a beautiful time there. I would say that it was one of the best visits ever, because people there are deeper, they're more committed to their spiritual lives, and they're more centered in themselves and uplifted. Now they're dealing with some very difficult financial and social issues in Europe, as you probably have read in the newspaper. So it's not as if everything outwardly is all fine and therefore they're centered and happy. It's much more that because of the practice of meditation and their spiritual life, that they're centered regardless of what goes on outside. Master said that we should be able to stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. And meditation over the period of time that you do it as you go deeper really gives you that potential to be able to be centered in yourself and remain calm and, in fact, happy in all circumstances. Not that the circumstances create happiness, but you know that it comes from within. So we had this beautiful time in Italy. A couple of very interesting things happened toward the end of the trip. We launched the Italian translation of the book that we launched here in India when we were here last, A Touch of Light. And in Italian it's Tocco di Luce, and it's been translated, each of those little essays have been translated into Italian, and it's beautifully designed by an artist there. So we launched that at a yoga festival in Rome. Yearly for the last many years in Rome, they have had this wonderful yoga festival. And this year, as it generally takes place in this beautiful, very large park. Think, for those of you who know Lodi Gardens, it's kind of a park of that size, maybe even a little bit bigger, but a beautiful park. And there it might have been almost a vision from Vedic times, I think. There were many different groups out under various trees for shade because it was warm, and they were doing yoga postures, or you'd walk by along a path and you'd look over and you'd see a group of 15 or 20 people sitting there meditating in the either lotus posture or cross-legged, sitting on grass. And here it was, right in the middle of Rome, a very busy, very Western city. And so they erected a large pandal for us, and in that pandal, maybe between 250 and 300 people gathered, and we gave a discourse on Yogananda's teachings on how to be happy. And then at the end of that, we launched the book Tocco di Luce, and it was a very nice event. Then the next evening, interestingly enough, we had dinner with the Indian ambassador to Italy, a wonderful, wonderful man, Mr. Gupta, along with his wife and 2 children. And he has been the ambassador there for a number of years, 2 or 3 years, and he's a very, very fine person. He's not so interested in politics, at least with us. He wasn't. He's interested in philosophy, he's interested in spirituality, and he's written a couple of books, one on the Ramayana, another on just high Indian teachings, and he's now working on a book on the Bhagavad Gita. He knows the entire Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit. He knows by memory every verse, and we would talk about, a subject, and he would quote one of in chapter 14, and he would quote the sloka in the appropriate sloka in Sanskrit, and we would talk about that a little bit. But a wonderful man, high-minded, and he has made a genuine and very loving connection with several members, many members from Ananda who live in Italy, and Ananda's work. And interestingly enough, in March of this coming year, he will be shifting to Gurgaon, and I think that we will end up seeing a great deal more. Mr. Gupta, I think I mentioned, is his name, and I think we'll see a great deal more of him. Just one of, he's the ambassador to Rome, but India has certain ambassadors to the world that represent the highest. I stand in awe and admiration of the combination that you see so often in Indians, where they are highly, highly educated, highly competent at the work that they do, and yet deeply spiritual and deeply connected to their own inner life. And when you see that combination, and I see it more among Indians, honestly, than generally speaking among Westerners. Western businessmen, you're a little surprised if they say, oh yes, I have a deep practice of meditation. I read scripture every day. I know scripture by heart. I have this deep connection with it. You're surprised. But if you hear an Indian say that, not so much surprised. So for Devi and me, it is just a wonderful, heart-opening experience to be back here in India. We had a little tea here at the ashram here in Gurgaon. I guess it's not such a little tea. There were 50 or 60 people who came, but it was so heart-opening, touching, I should say, to look out and see deep people that we have deep friendships with and have known for many, many years now. In some cases, we have known people since the very beginning of the new work in India, starting around 2003, when Swamiji came here and began establishing Ananda's presence and giving so many classes and television shows and bringing the awareness of Yoganandaji to a higher level here in India. At any rate, looking out, there were many, many people there that we have known now for more than a decade. And it's not just know in terms of kind of acquaintances or even a working relationship. It's the deep friendship and natural friendship that is formed. And we felt the same in Italy. Really, the nations of the world are not nearly as important as the vibrational level. Swami would often say that when a Western businessman comes to India, he meets other businessmen. When a crook goes from one country to another, he gathers with other crooks. And so vibrationally people come together, not so much occupationally, but vibrationally, with people who are similar in temperament to them. And when Devi and I travel, all we ever see basically are wonderful friends, children of Master, people who feel deeply touched by Swamiji, by what he has brought. And in that way, in a certain sense, we never feel that we really travel anywhere. We just kind of go in one door of an airplane and come back out, and we're still at Ananda, or very quickly there at Ananda, because that vibration is established and it's worldwide. It doesn't depend on language or culture or skin color or anything else. It's just a vibrational similarity among people who love God, love Master, have been touched by Swamiji, and yet its epicenter in many ways is here in India. And so we're very, very happy to be back. I think you know that we will be here until the beginning of December on this trip, and then we'll return for the holiday seasons in America, which it's still important that we have our presence there, and of course we'd love to be there in any case. Then we'll come back in February and March to India. And so, as Devi began by saying, it just feels wonderful to be back here in our home, in the ashram here, our little apartment there, and we feel so settled and so comfortable, and it's just a joy to be back. And we'll be seeing all of you many more times virtually like this, but we'll also be seeing probably all of you, or virtually all of you, in person as we give classes in various places or travel some. And so we look forward to picking up our friendship and our spirituality, our spiritual path, right where we have left it, and just continue it along. So, a great joy to be here. God bless you.
Well, every time we return to India, each trip, I've come to realize, has its own, I might say, character, its own nature, and it's slightly different each time. When we came, for example, in the fall of 2013, after Swamiji had passed in April of 2013, the nature of that trip was really to reassure everyone that even though Swami had left his body, his work, his spirit was still continuing, and Ananda was strong and focused. And last year when we came, in 2014, then we did a lot of traveling, a lot of public discourses in different places, and it felt like we were reaching new people, trying to draw them to Master's teachings. This year we've just begun, but the 2015 visit, but I can sense already it's going to be different from years past. In part, it's because we'll be connecting with more of you through the internet. But this is such a marvelous tool. There was an absolutely delightful incident that happened when we were in Italy. A friend of ours was taking us out to dinner at a little country inn. They call them agroturismo, agricultural tourist inns, because they're in the country, and just very simple places, but often you can get wonderful, wonderful food there. So the place our friend was taking us to was quite remote. You had to drive down little side roads and through woods and forests, and finally we got to this little country inn, and we got out, and our friend introduced us to the hostess, a woman named Franca, and she said, "These are my friends, Jyotish and Devi." And here we were in the middle of nowhere, seemingly And Franca said, oh yes, I know them, we're friends on Facebook. And we just laughed and laughed because it's such a small world now through the internet. And so we'll be connecting in many ways in the months ahead through the internet. And I can see part of the nature of this trip will be one to expand all of Ananda's presence, because as we were mentioning earlier, traveling is more difficult within each city than it used to be. So we have to find ways to really share the teaching, share inspiration, share satsang through the internet. But then I think it's also very, very important. One of our purposes in coming this time is to see how we can all join together to bring more people on as teachers of our wonderful techniques, the teachings that Yoganandaji, our Guru Deva, gave us. And we're really working on developing more focused, effective, systematic meditation teacher training. And we would love to see more and more teachers, and that if you have any interest in this, we really hope you will not be shy about it. You know, in the early years of Ananda, many of us had much less experience than you already do on the spiritual path with these techniques and teachings. And Swamiji just pushed us into the deep end of the swimming pool, you might say, where we had to sink or swim. And he just said, okay, I want you to start teaching. And we didn't feel at all adequate to do it. But I can see now as the years go by, he was just wanting us to get the confidence, even though maybe we weren't very deep in meditation, maybe we didn't understand a lot of the philosophy, perhaps as well as we do now, and maybe we couldn't articulate it as well. But he wanted us to get across that threshold where we said, this is my life. I know this is helpful. I'll share what I understand of it. And little by little, over the years, one gets confidence, one gets the ability to really, one might say, be a channel, not only for the teachings in the sense that you can read them in a book, but be also channels for Master's vibration. And really, India, we are a team here as Master's children. When we were in Italy, a friend of ours told us something very interesting. She and her husband were living there in 2003 when Swami Kriyananda, decided to come to India and begin work for Master here. And our friend said her husband went to Swamiji and said, you know, I know you're forming a team to come over, and I would really like to come to India because I really would like to go deeper in meditation, have time for silence and solitude, really deepen my search for God. And Swami was very surprising to us in the answer he gave to that man. He said, I don't want you to come if that's your intention. I want people who are willing to really go out there and work in spreading Master's teachings. If you're only thinking of coming for your own spiritual benefit, then I'm not choosing you as part of my team. And this was very interesting to that thought, and really it applies to all of us. Of course we want to find God, of course we want to go deeper in the spiritual life, but Swami's life, as Master told him, if you recall in the New Path, Master said to Swamiji, your life is one of intense activity and meditation. And I think we all follow in that mold, that we have a lot to do to serve others. And Master also said to Swami, toward the end of his life, toward the end of Master's life, he said, all the other men disciples have disappointed me, and you must not disappoint me. And he said it with great intensity. And Swamiji explained what he meant by that. He said because there certainly were other I should say I misquoted that. I must correct that. He said all the other men disciples, with the exception of Rajasi, have disappointed me. But you must not disappoint me. And how Swami explained that was, certainly there were great devotees among the men disciples, but they were all doing it for their own benefit, for their own spiritual growth. And Swami instinctively, from his first reading of autobiography of the yogi on the trip back across the country from New York to Los Angeles, he was thinking, he said two thoughts. One, these teachings are so wonderful. Finally, I have found a purpose in my life, and I must share them with everyone. And so somehow this trip feels to me, the nature of it will be all of us understanding, yes, we have had wonderful good karma. Most of us have met Swami, and were able to be with him and as he traveled throughout India. Many of us who are listening or watching this evening, we've had the blessing of Guru Diksha, the initiation through Kriya Yoga initiation, but really it's not enough. Now we really must find ways, in whatever way we can, to share these. And I really feel that's the nature of our trip here this time, to build a momentum, to gather together those who really can feel this is their dharma. It's not that you have to give up your job or leave your family or any of those things. Of course not. But how can you take the next step in being an instrument for these teachings? And another thing too that I feel will be part of the nature of this trip is because so many of you we have shared with on a deep level, but we will have times to go deeper. We will be having 2 weekends back to back, going to Babaji's cave, and Daya and Keshava who organized the pilgrimages based at our ashram in Panchil Park in Delhi, said that we have over 45 people in each of those 2 pilgrimages. So there will be a time also to share on a very deep level. And then towards the end of November in Gormont, you can read the details on the Ananda India website, but we will be having a special extended weekend called a Spiritual Renewal Weekend, in which we will many of our teachers, our acharyas throughout India, will be presenting. Jyotish and I will do some discourses, have questions and answers, have time to meditate together. So I hope it can also be a time where we as a spiritual family can all go deep together through these various ways. And of course, if you look at our schedule, we'll be giving discourses in Pune City, in the Pune Retreat, in Noida, and different places. So these are all opportunities to be together. But, I wanted to share also a delightful story, a joke. Jyotish mentioned that we had dinner with Mr. Gupta, Vasant Gupta, the Indian ambassador to Italy, actually. And very charming, delightful person, but he told us a wonderful joke that has actually spiritual ramifications. You can actually meditate on it, and I think it helps you get some insight about the nature of delusion. He said a man went to a doctor, and he said, "Doctor, I'm afraid that I'm very, very ill. Wherever I touch, it hurts. If I touch my arm, it hurts. If I touch my leg, it hurts. If I touch my head, it hurts. If I touch my chest, it hurts. And doctor, please, we need to do so many tests to find out what's wrong with me." And the doctor said, "Very well." And they ran him through a whole regime of tests, and they got the results in. The doctor called this man, and he said, "Well, I have some very good news for you and some bad news. First, the very good news is there's absolutely nothing wrong with your body. Your arm is fine, your leg is fine, your head is fine, your chest is fine, but you have a broken finger. And so wherever you touch, it hurts. And Mr. Gupta, went on to say, and this is because we are separated from God. The broken finger represents our own broken connection with God and Guru. And because that connection is broken, nothing feels right. We feel that something is amiss. And this is such a, really, if we could all just remember this, live with this awareness that whenever we're unhappy, whenever we're in a mood, whenever we get easily angry or irritated, if we simply remember, I know what's wrong. The broken finger, the broken connection. I've lost my connection with God and Guru. And do whatever you can to come back to that. Inwardly chanting, taking some time out and meditating, doing a few kriyas, but mainly drawing your consciousness to God and Guru, to remember you are my lifeline, you are the source of my happiness, you are the source of my well-being. We were visiting a friend recently who is dealing with cancer, and I think the prognosis is good, but there will be treatments necessary. And it was so beautiful. Our friend is a long-time Kriya Bandhan disciple, and she and her husband, when we visited them, it was honestly such a blessing to be with them, because there they were in a hospital, and there was a lot of, as hospitals are, a lot of people coming in and out, and people on gurneys being wheeled by, and people sitting in chairs waiting to be treated, and people sick and calling out for help. But our friends were so centered in God's joy, and we sat and talked with them for hours. And we could have been anywhere in the world. We could have been seated in a beautiful temple. We could have been on a beautiful mountaintop in the Himalayas. It didn't matter, because their awareness, their connection with God and Guru was stronger than ever. And I wonder, and I have a strong suspicion that this is true, that tests come into our lives. Yes, it's our karma, of course, but they come for us to realize everything hurts if I don't remember God and Guru. And so we think of tests as, oh, I wish this weren't happening. But so often, I know in my own life, when everything's happy and going well, I kind of take the awareness of Master, maybe recedes a little bit to the background of my mind. But when things are difficult, then I cling to awareness of Master's presence within me with much more determination and focus. And so, really, we shouldn't be afraid of whatever comes. If it's good, let it be a prod to be grateful to God for the grace and the gifts He has given. When it's difficult, that too, let it make you even more determined to find God. You know, another thing that was very touching to us when we were in Italy, talking with many, many friends and disciples there, and we meditated in the little house that Swami lived in there. They now call it Seva Kutir. I believe Swami called it that during his lifetime. And, Swami called it Seva Kutir, but now they call it Moksha Kutir, because that's where Swami left his body. And we meditated in the little room, his little bedroom, where he actually did physically leave his body. And the vibrations there are so profound, so beautiful. You can feel he is so close to all of us. And many of our friends there that we shared with, perhaps over tea or having a meal together, they told us stories about since Swamiji's passing, how he has been so active and so present in their lives. One of our friends there told us a story that was very, very touching to us. She and her husband are in charge of our, we have a community there, rural property, and there's a certain portion of it that is what they call terre de luce, the lands of light, and it's different pieces of land where they're doing agricultural effort. And they've had some setbacks, and they're having a lot of financial problems trying to pay the bills for different equipment they've had to buy, and water piping and so forth. And so she said one night she was so worried, she couldn't sleep all night because she just couldn't figure out how they were going to pay all their bills, and was very worried about it. And then the next day, they took many of the agricultural produce, the beautiful big tomatoes and onions and lettuce and fruits and many beautiful things that they're growing there. And they have a little market where they, outside of the community, where people come, outsiders and visitors, and they sell their produce. So our friend, her name is Christina, she was telling us she was selling some of the produce there, and a woman came up who was visiting the community, but she didn't know her. This was her first time coming. This just happened a few months ago. And the woman, Christina said, I could tell she wanted to tell me something, but then she walked away. And then she came back, and again, she was sort of hovering around, and then she walked away a second time. And then a third time she came up, and Christina said to her, is there something you want to tell me? And the woman said, well, yes, there is. She said, I have an intuitive ability. I can see spirits, I can see people that are not in their physical body, and I can give messages that they want to be delivered to their friends or their loved ones. And she said, I'm seeing someone standing behind you, and he has a message for you. And she said, did your father die recently? And Christina said, no, my father hasn't died. And she said, well, there's a man standing right behind you that I see. And she described him, and it was Swami Ananda. And she said, he has a very, very eternal love for you. And he wants me to tell you not to worry. Everything is going to be just fine. Everything will work out well. And Christina said it just relieved such a burden from her heart. And that was one of many, many stories that we heard. And I just wanted to share that one with you. But just to remember that Swami's presence in all of our lives, for those of us who knew him, who know him, I should say, don't think that he's left, that he's not there to help us and to guide us spiritually. But, you know, I had another understanding that came to me. Some years ago, Swami gave us a very high goal that he set for all of us. He said, you should all try to become Jivan Muktas in this lifetime, free of karma while still living, and set that as your goal. And he said this maybe about 10 years ago. And when he first said it, I thought, well, that's such a high goal. I don't know if I can achieve that in this lifetime. I don't know if I'm that worthy to do that, if I'm advanced enough to do that, if I have the spiritual determination and focus to do that in this lifetime. And I felt a little discouraged because I thought, I don't know if I can do that. But you know, the realization is starting to dawn on me that when Swami said that, what he was really telling us was, I will help you achieve this if you try. And so it wasn't like he was saying, drive off into the unknown and goodbye and good luck. He was saying, if you try to achieve this, I will help you. And so for all of us, whatever your next step is spiritually, set your goals high. And Swamiji, Master, that's why they've come. They haven't come just to give us a body of teachings. They haven't come just to give us techniques. They have come to help us find God, to help us get out of delusion, to help us find moksha. And I felt such a joy when I understood that Swami gave us, set our sights as far as we could see, but then inwardly he was saying, I will be your guide. And so for all of us, let us move forward spiritually with great faith, with great enthusiasm, with great humility, because without humility, the ego can slip in so easily and say, I'm going to find God and I'm going to achieve this and that and the other. That doesn't impress God and Guru at all. But if we can just have the childlike faith and confidence that we are nothing we can do, outwardly or inwardly, is really of any importance. But Ananda Moima said, who do you think is even doing the sadhana? You're not doing it. God and Guru are doing it through you. And so let us live with great joy and great hope that through the grace of our masters and God and Guru, we can find God and we can be a channel through sharing these teachings with others to give others the encouragement that they too can move forward spiritually. So we really look forward to these months ahead. I can already sense they're going to go by far too quickly, but we will enjoy the time that we do have. Not try to be greedy and say we want more and more. But for Jyotish and for me, we feel so grateful to be with all of you, to be sharing, to be of help in any ways that we can. And it is our great joy to be once more with you here in India. And we look forward to seeing you, and we look forward to moving forward spiritually, shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, as children of our great Guru, Jyotish.